Perfectly.
Okay, good. So thanks for the introduction. So as Pari said already, I'm sharing some methodological findings from my research with young people. So when I started my PhD, I had a plan A and a plan B. And then COVID happened and suddenly it looked something like this. Maybe some of you can relate. And at first I focused on all the obstacles in my way, and especially my online focus groups were in jeopardy as I wasn't allowed at the research site anymore. But then after some time, I also realized that there were some opportunities that came with this change. And so the question I want to address in this presentation today is what obstacles and opportunities arise when conducting online focus groups with secondary school students. And I'll start by outlining some findings from the literature, and then I'll share some insights from conducting online focus groups with young people. So first of all, we have, that's what Elizabeth said already as well, we have different types of online focus groups. So there's synchronous and asynchronous. And I decided to conduct synchronous focus groups so that happen at a specific point in time where the researcher meets participants. And I decided to go for the face-to-face and audio version. There's also text-based, but this was most closely aligned with the focus groups that I was initially going to conduct. So in figure 1, you can see an outline of my search strategy, and that I used 17 articles that I will, some findings from which I will outline now. And I focused on the areas planning online focus groups, building relationships, and assessing data quality. So firstly, it's important to realize that online focus groups don't simply replace offline focus groups, but they require a methodological change. In addition, the literature suggests that there's a higher dropout rate online, and this can be addressed by, for example, oversampling participants, scheduling regular follow-ups, and making the first contacts as personal as possible. Furthermore, literature suggests a smaller group size. The papers I reviewed suggest between 3 and 8 participants to be a manageable number. And this also depends, of course, on the age of the participants and your research focus. Furthermore, the length should be reduced because of screen fatigue, which we're all well aware of. Then, in addition, we should consider some of the access, connection speed, and interruption issues that might happen. And Elizabeth already talked about some common issues there as well. We can amend some of these things by, for example, screening participants before, which means assessing the devices they have and their technological abilities, which can then help us to adjust our methods. We can also provide joining instructions and tutorials. Now, all of these factors should be considered when we choose a suitable platform, and the pandemic has hurried the development of platforms along, so now we have a wide array to choose from. I just want to point you to one resource that I found particularly useful in comparing different platforms. And finally, the moderator needs different skill sets, as they need both technical and conversational skills. Moving on to building relationships. So literature shows that online focus groups can be comfortable for participants. This is especially because we're spending more and more time on the internet. You can see here in figure 2, internet usage data from Germany, which is where I conducted my research. And it shows that young people there spend an average of 4.5 hours online in 2020. And furthermore, building relationships is different in online environments, which we should also acknowledge. And it might be helpful, the literature suggests, to, for example, build relationships before we have the actual focus groups through, for example, online contact. And now the final topic of the literature was data quality. And studies suggest that their participants were engaged in genuine discussions online, and that using audio and video might help with that, because we can also use visual clues. In addition, the literature suggests that rich data could be collected with online focus groups, and that this data might be similar to offline and online, but there's still a lack of studies, so this might be an area for further research. And finally, communication might be impacted, which we've heard already today as well. All right, now I'd like to share some findings from my own research. So I'm doing a cross-sectional mixed method exploratory case study, and I'm collecting data in a rural secondary school in the German county of Baden-Württemberg, which you can see here on the map. And my research focuses on citizenship activities young people engage in as part of a changing democracy, and how citizenship education addresses these changing citizenship activities. I'm talking to different stakeholders. So, for example, I looked at curriculum documents, I did online teacher interviews, a student questionnaire, and I managed to do one focus group offline, and then COVID happened, so I moved them online. And in total, I did 7 online focus groups, and I trained some of the Year 10 students to conduct their own focus groups as well. Today, I want to talk about some of the findings from the online focus groups that I conducted, but maybe in the discussion section, we could talk about the other methods as well. So firstly, I encountered some challenges. The first one was that I had to adjust my methods. I decided to use Zoom because of cost reasons. It's easy to use. It's a safe tool that's quite stable, and it enabled me to use video and audio. And the most important point for me was that it was a tool that's familiar to students at school, which is what some of the presenters, for example, Smitri said before as well, that this it's important to build trust with the institution you're working with. And I changed some of the aspects of my discussion. For example, I used the pair share option, and I decided to have no more than 5 participants, which was in the end quite hard to get actually. Then accessing participants and getting consent was probably the most challenging aspect. So I wasn't allowed to enter the research side, which is why I decided to conduct participants through videos. And I made sure that my face is on there, quite like a video of me, so to make it a bit more personal. Then I did my consent process on Qualtrics, and students received a link to go on Edmodo, which you can see here. That's an online collaboration platform where I could message participants privately. We could have a group chat to arrange the dates. I could share documents, and participants can also invite their parents, which creates transparency. So I really recommend this tool. It's free to use. Furthermore, I offered participants to join as a friend group, which made them more comfortable to join. But in the end, I still had less participants than expected, as most of us did. Finally, some technical difficulties I encountered were access, audio quality, and that the video wasn't working. And you can see in brackets how many participants were affected by that. And finally, some other interruptions included lateness, which was like happening in almost all of my focus groups, background noises at participants' homes, participants speaking at the same time, and some people didn't show up. So now, amongst all of these challenges, there were some great opportunities that came along with this shift as well, which I want to talk about in my final aspect. So I think I managed to create a comfortable and informal atmosphere. The online setting actually provided quite a neutral setting where everyone was seated in the same manner, and I feel like that was quite beneficial. The informal conversation at the start was very similar to offline focus groups. The recording device is very like small, hidden in the corner and not as prominent in the middle. Furthermore, we had less time pressure than we would have had at school. We didn't have to wear masks or do social distancing. So all of these factors contributed to an informal atmosphere. A useful feature that I used were breakout rooms. So I allowed participants to discuss a topic before sharing it with the whole group with a partner, which made them feel safe to share. And finally, I think I collected data. I'm still in the middle of analysis, but it was data that was relevant to my research questions. There were lively discussions among participants, and I managed to collect different types of data. And 2 more useful tools that Zoom offers was the screen share function, which we've used a lot today. And you can see on the side, you can see the participants could actually look each other in the eye while they were talking about statements I shared on the screen. And finally, the polling function was really useful, where I could pose questions to the participants and then share their responses, which could then lead to further discussion. And I thought, let's try this out today, so you can all get a feel for how this looks like. Georgia, would you please share the poll, because she's the host, so I can't actually do it myself. Yes, so maybe if you could just click on the poll to put in your answers. And then Georgia, when most people have answered, you can just finish the poll and share the results to participants. Yes, so now you should be able to see the results. So this was quite a useful tool for me to then further engage in discussions. Then I could like ask them, okay, why did you engage in this citizenship activity? Can you talk more about it? Or why was this an area that you didn't like? Okay, so finishing up my presentation, I want to conclude with a quote from Stewart and Shamdasani, who suggests that instead of seeing the online focus groups as an expansion of offline focus groups, we should see both of them as individual tools that are a part of the researcher's toolkit. And that choosing which one we want to use should more depend on the group of participants we're working with in our topic, rather than having it online or offline. Yeah, so thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. I hope I didn't go over time.
No, thank you so much, Janina. That was great.